Just a quick note, this video contains some very minor and light spoilers for all the anime mentioned, but nothing much past the synopsis of the story itself. But I must stress that if you'd like to go into this story absolutely blindfolded, then this likely isn't the video for you. In addition, as you can see, this video is going to be particularly lengthy. I thought I'd just share my thoughts on something I picked up from this great show I watched. Enjoy. In spring of 2004, the 1994 manga was finally adapted into its very own anime, Monster, produced by Madhouse and directed by the genius mind of Kojima Maisuke. Surprisingly enough, many have yet to see this anime, perhaps due to the fact that its animation is fairly dated, and it's not exactly a hot topic in the thriving anime community. However, this doesn't take away its sheer brilliance displayed in the storytelling and characters. Now, to all those who have had the privilege of seeing this great show, I'm sure many will agree this is certainly one of the stronger titles within the seinen genre, that also incorporates a nice blend of drama, psychology and thrill. Yet, I'm not here today to do an in-depth analysis on this anime, nor will I be briefly overviewing it, or even nitpicking. Rather, I'm going to discuss the very simple and effective technique the animators have utilized in order to enunciate the sense of loss and solitude the protagonist feels. Now, this is most noticeably seen in the opening titles. But just quickly, if you're unfamiliar with the show entirely, or just forgotten its premise, here's a synopsis. I cannot be asked for the life of me to read this, so if you just pause it and feel the need to read it, then that's cool. Done? Alright, let's get back on track. The opening theme, Grain, produced by Kuniaki Haishima, features a 1 and 26-second long blend of rather haunting beats to coincide with the incredibly eerie atmosphere generated by the slow and almost silent opera. To add to this, there is a lack of vocals, which further adds to the environment, perhaps posing as a potential metaphor for the distance Kenzo feels in regards to society, wandering and alone. The first couple of shots are nothing noteworthy, and actually play into spoiler territory, so we won't be discussing them, but as soon as Kenzo is pictured in frame, the camera is fixated on his eyes, and then facial expression. This shows his cautious demeanor, and his grim facial expression showcases the lack of desire he possesses to have adopted this attitude. Whether this means he is on the lookout for Johan, the series' antagonist, or perhaps even the police, seeing that he was framed, is up to the viewer's interpretation. What I find even more appealing, though, is the very next shot. It shows Kenzo walking in the opposing direction of the general public, his eyes reluctantly looking forward rather than behind him as the other members of the public seem to be facing. The fact that the people around him seem to be going the opposing direction hints at this idea that Kenzo is very far from societal norms, and almost going off on his own tangent, wandering and astray from the people around him, almost out of touch with society, in order to complete his quest. This idea of solitude and the betrayal to society is further emphasized with the song choice itself. It's a slow piece, but it could almost be perceived as his own mindset. A singular voice admits to thousands of others, against all odds, against the police, the BKA, and Johan and his schemes. In effect, Kenzo seems to be lost. This could simply be a case of overanalysis. What is interesting is that even the positioning of objects are facing away from Kenzo, seen in the car in this shot. Keep that in mind as we'll be looking at that once again later on. The following shots depict Kenzo running through a train station, desperate and cautious, constantly examining his surroundings, almost as if something is following him. Or perhaps someone. He is then hit by a wave of reality as he finally stares back in shock, and we see a train move past him, in the direction he has been so everly reluctant to gaze upon. It truly outlines how inaccessible and dispassionate he is for society, and how even falling under the bracket of normality is seemingly unusual given his current circumstances. The next shot is one of the most interesting ones actually. Kenzo is seen, once again, facing away from the general public, while secretly observing those around him as seen from a woman who walks past. Notice how Kenzo only begins to examine the person once they are no longer in a position where they can see him. It shows how untrusting and circumspect he is, which is then accentuated once a man begins to walk in the direction as he looks away. This is actually one of the first instances whereby a person begins to walk in the direction of Kenzo rather than following society's average direction. The immediate withdrawal of examination is highlighted in this scene, potentially signifying the panic and trepidation he feels once an outsider enters his own bubble. Now, I won't begin to examine the rest of the opening, considering that my point has essentially been displayed. But the other scenes feature various shots of Kenzo once again running and confused, disobeying the general leadership of society, and apprehensive yet bold in his actions to carve his own path and walk the direction he feels is right, although not without his own morality at stake. The concept that society moves in a singular and linear manner manifests the idea that Kenzo is an outlier in the fact that he walks his own path, but it's also a clever visual trick that plays on the mind and ever so subtly brings about the sense of destitute and lonesome attributes, directly applying to our main protagonist. This is actually a concurring theme throughout the anime, and it isn't just shown through the opening. rather it is showcased in many other aspects throughout the series. For instance, in episode 11, named Kinderheim 511, there is a scene early on that lucidly reinforces this concept of society's general direction and how it differs from Kenzo, seen in the following shots. Notice the differences in positioning and placement of such background vehicles, and in addition, the silhouettes all seemingly examining his every move. A nudge to Johan and this idea that he's constantly in the shadows observing him. But this is one of the many examples seen throughout this 74 episode long show, and quite frankly, we'll be here all day if we are to thoroughly examine every nook and cranny the series has to offer in regards to the points I've expressed. I'd like to go on a small tangent and express the similarities of this idea in another anime, that being Psycho Pass. During the first season and towards its second half, we witnessed the turn of Shinya Kogami against the Sibyl system, as he, in a similar manner that Kenzo did, proceeds to question the morality of society. In the second opening, entitled Out of Control by the band Nothing is Carved in Stone, one of the final shots indicate Kogami, our protagonist, facing and moving away from the direction his fellow colleagues at Division 1 seem to take, outlining his lonesome and desolate quest and enunciating how much of an outlier he poses, not only to his friends, but to civilization itself. It's an interesting shot that expresses a large amount of visual information with the single motion of a character walking. Now, I'm not saying that Psycho Pass has directly stolen this from Monster, nor am I referencing how uncanny the similarities between both series are, but I found it an interesting concept to bring to the table, seeing that both are large seinen shows featuring protagonists who seem alienated from societal norms. Okay, this has nothing to do with my original point, but it is noteworthy to mention that there are some similarities between Psycho Pass and Monster, other than the simple fact that both seem to be a psychological thriller that incorporate hunting down a serial killer in a detective fashion. They do have some very subtle similarities as well, other than, for one, the first ending theme for Monster features a small and ugly creature that stands upon a hill with a slow but rather soothing song by David Sylvian and entitled For the Love of Life. What many are unaware of is this song is actually taken from an old picture book named The Monster Without a Name. It's a rather odd story that I won't explain, but it does directly reference Monster and specifically Johan. Coincidentally, the first ending theme for Psycho Pass features a song named The Monster Without a Name, performed by Egoist. The title of course references the series' primary antagonist, Shogo Makishima, who upon contemplation has a very similar character to that of Johann Liebert. Both largely sit out of society as observers and share similar behavioural traits, ideals and methods to accomplish their goals. It's quite interesting. All in all, Monster is a fantastic series, with small yet genius narrative and visual trickery employed by its writers and animators, as I've explained throughout this video. If you've yet to see Monster, it's definitely worth your time, despite its dated appearance. If you do happen to take a peek at the series, do inform me in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your opinions. With that being said, I have not else much to say, and thus this concludes this short video essay.